Hello everyone, back tuning into the 5th Autumn 2018 Analogues update from Gazzoviz.com. So we've done 4 Analogues updates to the Autumn 2018 so far, and we've also done 1 seasonal model roundup as well. And another one of those is to come in just under a week's time on Saturday, actually. So this is going to be a bit of a QBO special. The 4th Analogues update finished off with the QBO. We're going to pick the story up by looking at the strong and mature easterly QBO autumns, but are kind of waning and beginning to back away from that easterly QBO through the autumn season. I'll explain it all for you in a second. Big thank you to our Analogues guru James Ackrill, for getting all of the charts together for us. As always, James has come through for us, and a big thank you to James Ackrill for getting all of these analogues together. Going to be quite a long video, so you can't watch it all in one go. It will be placed on the Autumn Updates podcast page later on today with a written summary, just going over everything that we discuss in the video. Coming up later on today, we're going to have the Gazzoviz Sunny Roundup. As always, on Sunday, we'll have your eclectic mix of this and that. And then, as we get through to late this afternoon, we'll have the long-range update from the E70UF and Meteo France seasonal models. And that'll be coming up probably around 5 o'clock, something like that, this afternoon. So a busy old day at Gazzoviz. Really warm again tonight. You'll know if you're watching these updates, or you've been watching these updates through the season. A couple of weeks ago, I sort of overheated a little bit, so I felt very unwell a couple of weeks ago, as I did the 3rd Analogues update. Things were better last week. It wasn't as hot here in the room last week. It was a very warm evening this evening. I'm not feeling too bad at the moment. I'll probably pause the video halfway through to go and have a cold drink. I've had a cold drink already. I'll probably pause at some point halfway through and go and get another cold drink as well. So it's just so hot at the moment, and it is making these late evening long-range updates a little bit grueling. I have to say, I will be quite pleased now when this hot weather begins to break down. But of course, the weather will do what it wants to do, and we just have to put up with it. So I'll get on with the Analogues update for you right now. I think that just about sums up everything that I've got to tell you. So, as I say, it's going to be a bit of a QBO special. Now, last week we actually left off the 4th update with the QBO. We had a look at autumns following QBOs, where we've had a very strong June easterly QBO. So we had a look at strong easterly QBO Junes and the autumns that followed them. But now we're going to have a look at the general easterly QBO, and I'll talk you through what we're going to look at right now. So, of course, the quasi-biennial oscillation is an index that's reflecting the strength of the zone of westerlies, essentially. So when you're in an easterly QBO, we are in an easterly QBO right now and have been since last year, then the zone of westerlies are weaker, we're in their weaker phase. And when the QBO is in its westerly phase, however, then the zone of westerlies are strengthened. Now, this is particularly something that we look at for the winter. It's a critical, important factor within the winter updates. And by the way, winter updates will begin at the start of September, so just a little plug for that. It's getting ever closer day by day. We're counting down the days to start of the winter 18-19 updates at the beginning of September. And the QBO will make up a big factor in terms of the winter updates. We've seen that for the summer updates. It's a much more, when we did the summer updates, it was a much more patchier signal, really, the QBO. Not as important in the summer as it is in the winter. I assume that the autumn, it's probably not as important as it is in the winter. It's probably more important than it is in the summer, as we are getting ever closer to the winter. And by autumn, the zone of westerlies are beginning to become a little bit more impactful. But just how important the QBO will be for autumn as a season as a whole is a moot point. I suppose it's probably not that important for September, but by November, perhaps it is quite important. So, food for thought, anyway. So let's have a look at this chart then. This is our chart of the quasi-biennial oscillation, and James has compiled this for us. So what you need to know with this is that negative numbers are easterly QBOs, and they're coloured blue. James has very kindly given us a color-coded table here. So the blue colours, these negative numbers up here, they are depicting easterly QBOs. And for example, in 1954, the whole of the year of 1954 was an easterly QBO year. It started off weak easterly QBO, and it ended up relatively weak easterly QBO, and in between the QBO, easterly QBO did go quite strong. Now, red colours on these charts are depicting the westerly QBO. So, for example, 1955, we begin with a very weak easterly QBO, and by the time we get through to the end of the spring and into the summer, we're going into a westerly phase of the QBO. So, the summer of 1995 was actually westerly QBO summer, and that continued through to the end of the year, strengthening the zonal westerlies, if you like. Now, there's always a time lag between an easterly and a westerly QBO. The QBO acts like a pulse, so it acts like a rhythm, a regular kind of pulsating type thing. So it should always be consistent, although we know what happened a couple of years ago, it did go out of sync, but that's very rare. Generally, the QBO is very consistent. And you always have a time lag between when you go from one phase, kind of like the easterly phase, through to the westerly phase. So, for example, you can see that, let's deal with 1954 again. So in 1954, we have a weak easterly QBO to the start of the year. It strengthens through the middle part of the year. So the summer of 1954 was a proper easterly QBO summer. Notice it reaches its peak there, which I think is around August. Let's see, August, September, October, November, December. Yeah, so that's the easterly QBO peak of 1954 in August 1954. Now, through the autumn of 1954, what we see is that the QBO, the easterly QBO, gradually eases. So it's not going westerly through that autumn. It is still an easterly QBO, but it's gradually easing down and slowly beginning to drift back into the westerly phase of the QBO. And the proper overlap of the proper change happens actually through kind of like the spring of 1955 in this part just here. So it takes a little while to go from one phase to another, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on for this video, because I think this autumn is going to be similar to 1954, actually. Going to be an autumn where we sort of relax out of the easterly QBO. Probably won't go westerly through this autumn. That'll probably be, say, for winter 2018-19. But we should gradually see the QBO beginning to ease back. So this is 2018 just here. This is our year, of course. Been a very strong easterly QBO, but we've had this year. We start off in January and February with the easterly QBO coming out of -19 through to March. Then it gets even stronger through April, May and June. And so June comes out with an easterly QBO number of a very, very negative -28.45. That could well be the peak of this easterly QBO. And so what we're likely to see through August, September, October and November, what we're likely to see is just a very gradual easing of that easterly QBO. It won't go westerly, I don't think. I think it's too negative at this point to go negative. Well, you can have a very quick change sometimes. So, for example, here in 2015, we have a really rapid change from westerly to easterly QBO. So it might go westerly in the autumn. We will cover that with this Analogues update as well. But the more likely scenario is just that we'll see a very gradual easing of the easterly QBO, relaxing or a waning of the easterly QBO, if you like. So let's have a look at those autumns that are strong easterly QBO autumns, but are gradually waning. The easterly QBO is gradually waning and easing. So we start off with one we're just looking at, 1954. And this is how the autumn of 1954 looks in terms of reanalysis. It's a proper westerly old autumn. This, we've got below average heights from the Atlantic into much of Europe, and then we've got, or I should say above average heights from the Atlantic into Europe. Got below average heights to the north of the country, and we're bringing in a westerly flow. So it's a mild autumn, that autumn of 1954, mild, wet and windy essentially in the autumn of 1954. Then through to 1960, so again this is a relaxing of the strong, mature easterly QBO in the autumn of 1960. Not yet westerly, not going into westerly QBO, but just a waning of that easterly QBO. And this is what we see with below average heights again to generally the south and southwest of the country. We have got a bit of a blocking signal up to our north, but it's not in a position to do anything cold. The flow and the jet is going through like that, or going through the country like that. So it looks generally mild but wet, the autumn of 1960. 1968 comes up next. So this one has above average heights to the north and also to our east as well, with below average heights, low pressure out in the Atlantic. This one looks a funny autumn pattern. The flow and the jet is doing something like that. Excuse me, a mild autumn in 1968. We're bringing the wind up from a southerly direction, and also quite unsettled, but there would have been reasonable amounts of dry weather too. So one of those in-between autumns in 1968. 1970 comes up next. I think 1970 is cropping up within the analogues quite a lot this year. Below average heights to the north, to the northeast of the country, above average heights down to the south. So quite a quiet autumn, really. The jet stream is coming through like that. It's mild, it's quiet, it's benign. There's not a lot going on through the autumn of 1970. Then we go through to 1972. This is the mature and strong easterly QBO autumn of 1972. That is gradually waning away from that easterly QBO. What we see for this one is that we get above average heights. Sorry, get rid of that. It is quite warm here in the room again, so if I get a little bit muddled up, that's why. A little bit of brain fog. So we've got the above average heights centred over and very close to the UK. Below average heights are up to the north and also to the south as well. The flow and the jet is going through rather like that. So that's another pretty quiet autumn in 1972. A lot of dry, quiet weather there, and not a lot going on. 1977 comes up next as the easterly QBO is fading away. In 1977 we have below average heights out to the north and west. We have above average heights to the south. The flow and the jet is going through like that. So again, a reasonably quiet autumn, not a huge amount going on, and generally quite mild too. There's been no cold autumn so far, you'll notice. So generally at the moment this looks like a reasonably mild signal and pretty quiet for the autumn. We've got another one. We've got 1979. This is another pretty quiet autumn with, again, above average heights centred pretty much close to the country from the Atlantic and ridging into Central Europe. Below average heights around Greenland and Iceland. The jet stream is up there. So this is another generally quiet, benign and mild, high pressure dominated autumn in 1979. Big changes for 1984 though. This is a much more unsettled autumn with a big area of below average heights over to the west of the country. There is a bit of a blocking signal, but it's not in a position to do anything cold through the autumn. The flow and the jet is going rather like that. So what we see with this particular autumn is that it's unsettled, but it is mild as well. It's a very mild autumn as the jet stream is generally coming in off the Atlantic with the flow kind of like southwesterly throughout most of the autumn. So it's wet, but it's a mild autumn in 1984. We're back to high pressure again in 1989. We've got above average height centred over top of the country through the autumn of 1989. It's that easterly QBO that we have through the earlier part of the year gradually begins to wane away through the course of the autumn of 1989. Low pressure around Greenland and Iceland. The jet stream is up there doing something like that. So just a lot of quiet, benign, mild weather in the autumn of 1989. 1994 comes up next, and we have above average heights over and to the east of the country with below average heights in the Atlantic. So this one's a reasonably quiet autumn as well. There is a lot of inter-month variation though through the autumn of 1994, so it is difficult to get an actual reanalysis for this autumn that covers what happened, because September 1994 was a wet and quite cool month, and then October generally quiet, and then we went through to November, which was exceptionally mild but also quite wet in November 1994. 1996 is our next waning easterly QBO autumn. This one with below average heights across central parts of Europe, above average heights in the Atlantic. Quite a blocking signal up to the north. The flow and the jet doing something like that. Again, this is another autumn with a lot of variation month to month. So September is very dry. Not overly warm, around average temperatures, but very dry in September. October, sort of a mild month, but quite dry, and then November is actually quite unsettled and also colder. There's a couple of snowy outbreaks during November 1996. Then we're through to the autumn of 1998. So this one has below average heights to the east and southeast of the country, above average heights in the Atlantic. Quite a blocking signal there through the autumn of 1998. That sort of went away through the course of the winter. That's a more unsettled autumn, really, in 1998. It did turn a little bit colder as we got through to November. I think October 1998 was very wet. Then we're back to an anticyclonic signal for the autumn of 2001. So, again, above average heights over, and this time centred to the west of the country overall for this autumn, with the flow and the jet like that. So September 2001 was was fairly quiet, but also quite cool. October was very warm month in October 2001, and quite wet. And then November, generally quite dry again. And a little bit colder in the November of 2001. And then that's 2003, the waning easterly QBO autumn of 2003 looks like that. Rather a bizarre chart, really, just lots and lots of high pressure covering our side of the pole, and also sort of like the Pacific side of the pole as well. Very bizarre looking chart in 2001. Not sure what's going on there. Overall, again, generally a dry autumn was experienced in 2003, and it had a chilly October, but September and November 2003 were quite mild. 2005 continues the anticyclonic signal again, with the above average heights over and to the east of the country as well, with the below average heights up to the northwest. That leaves us on the warm side of the jet stream. There's some very warm weather during the autumn of 2005 until late on, where it did turn cold in the second half of November. Anticyclonic signal again. Look at this. We have got a trend here, I think, for this Analogues update, with these waning easterly QBO update, with these waning easterly QBO autumns, and it's an anticyclonic signal that we've got here as our trend, with again above average heights, very close to the country, bringing plenty of dry weather through the autumn of 2007 after that horrible flooding summer allowed things to dry out. And then we're up to 2012, and this is a different one. So this breaks the trend. We have below average heights centred over top of the country in the autumn of 2012, with a blocking signal out to the west. The flow and the jet, therefore, is doing something like that. So on the cold side of the jet, it was quite a cool autumn 2012, and also very wet as well during that autumn. So let's put it all together then. Let's put all of those years together and come out with some overall all years combined charts. So we begin with the easterly QBO, the waning easterly QBO Septembers, and this is the signal for September. We get below average heights on average with all of these years to our east, and above average heights out to the west. It means that the flow and the jet doing something rather like that. So probably not particularly unsettled, actually, despite that below average height signal to our east. And most unsettled weather is going through Scandinavia down to Central Europe. We're blocking off the Atlantic to some degree, so it's not a desperately wet signal. Probably quite cool, though. These are probably quite cool Septembers on average, with the wind flow from kind of like a northwesterly type direction. Then we go through to the Octobers, and this is where the high pressure comes in. So it looks like after perhaps quite a changeable and cool signal for the Septembers, the Octobers tend to build in high pressure big time. Larger area of above average heights becomes centred almost over top of the country. So a strong anticyclonic signal, strong dry signal for the Octobers. And I assume it depends very much on the exact position of that high pressure, because in October, high pressure can go either way, really. High pressure can be very warm in October. It can be quite chilly if you're pulling the wind down from the north or northeasterly direction. And remember, this is an averaged chart of all of the year. So it's averaged Octobers, all year combined Octobers from 1954 all the way down to 2012. So on average, you centre the high pressure over top of the coast. But that is only an average, and there would be years that would have that high pressure to the north or the northwest. Consequently, we bring the wind in from the north or northeasterly direction in that scenario. There would also be years that have the high pressure to the south, to the east, and we bring up very warm southerly flows. So it could go either way, but it's definitely an anticyclonic signal in the Octobers. Then the Novembers do show a bit of a change again, and we lose that anticyclonic signal. We get an area of below average heights to the north of the UK with above average heights to the south. And so the Novembers are a little bit more unsettled. These are a particularly deep trough though, so I would think even in the Novembers, several of these years would be keeping a pretty strong anticyclonic signal actually. But overall, probably a little bit more unsettled in the Novembers, and generally fairly mild as well, with the wind coming in from off the Atlantic. If you put all of that together, this is actually how these autumns look, and it's like this. So we find that we have above average heights, albeit quite a weak area of above average heights, centred over the top of the country with some below average heights to the north and also to the south. Overall, the jet stream is probably to the north of the country on average. Bear in mind, that anticyclonic signal is very much being skewed by what's happening in the Octobers, which has a really, really strong anticyclonic signal. Now, should I pause the video there, or should I try and get done? I think we're going to carry on. I'm not feeling too bad, so we'll try and get finished. So we can try to narrow this down a little bit by having a look at we're going to have a look at two things. First one, we have a look at the easterly QBO when it's peaking in the summer and then waning through the autumn. And with this, we've taken out the easterly QBO years that transition very quickly to westerly QBO. So we'll deal with that in a moment. But these are the autumns that, within our analogues package, that peak the excuse me, that peak the easterly QBO through the summer. That's what's happened, I think, with this summer, because we had that very, very negative easterly QBO number for June. Might be as negative as the easterly QBO gets. So I think we have peaked this easterly QBO through this summer. So having a look at these autumns, this is what the Septembers look like. A little bit more of an unsettled signal with these Septembers, actually. So we have this large area of below average heights over and to the east of the country again, and a bit more of a blocking signal up to the north. So that's a more definitively wet scenario, I think. A little bit more definitively unsettled for these autumns in September, with the below average heights almost over the top of the UK. So the trough has been back westwards compared to the charts we was just looking at. We back the trough westwards and almost centred over top of the UK. So that will be really quite an unsettled signal for those Septembers. This is the Octobers when we peak the easterly QBO in the summer. And it's a bit more unsettled as well. So we have the below average heights up to the north of the country. We have the above average heights down to the south. The flow of the jets go through like that. Not cold, don't have to worry about temperature. But it is a little bit more influenced by below average heights to the north and to the northwest of the UK. So a little bit more unsettled with those Octobers compared to that strong anticyclonic signal we just looked at. And then this is the November signal. Again, all looks a little bit more unsettled for these autumns, with below average heights to our west and above average heights over and to the east of the country. The flow and the jet is doing something rather like that. So they're very mild autumns, with dragging the air up from the south, but they are also quite unsettled. Novembers, I should say, are also quite unsettled, about below average heights to the west of the country. The overall autumn signal looks like this. It is a good deal more unsettled compared to the analogues we were just looking at, with the below average heights centred over top of the country. Then the last thing I wanted to look at is when the QBO is switching quickly. So when you get a quick flip from the easterly to the westerly QBO during autumn. Now, there aren't many of these autumns that do this, but these are the autumns: 1959, 1963, 1982, 1987, 1992, and 2010. These autumns are basically westerly QBO autumns, so that's why they didn't appear in the earlier analogues package, because these are essentially westerly QBO autumns that have flipped very quickly from easterlies to westerlies. So let's just show you that by going back to this graph, actually. So let's deal with 2010 then. So this is the year of 2010, starting off with a very easterly QBO, negative QBO through the first half of the year, January, February, March, April, May, and June, coming out with very negative easterly QBO numbers. July suddenly starts to go, it's still negative, it's still ECQBO in July 2010, but much less so. It's gone from minus 25.05 to minus 9.84. And then you notice that by the time you get through to the end of the summer and into the start of the autumn, we're actually going westerly with that QBO. We've actually gone into westerly QBO through kind of like the autumn of from kind of like the autumn of 2010. So I think that's an unlikely scenario to happen with this autumn from where we are right now, but we can't completely rule it out. It could be that we will very quickly flip from an easterly to a westerly QBO in the next couple of months. So by the time you get through to October, November, we might, I think it's a very unlikely that we will, but we might be in a westerly QBO. So we do have to factor that in as a possibility, albeit a low possibility. So this is how the Septembers look when we're flipping very quickly from an easterly to a westerly QBO. We have above average heights very close to the UK, to the south and to the east, with below average heights out to the northwest. The flow and the jets doing something like that. They look generally very dry Septembers and quite warm Septembers as well. The Octobers, when we flip the QBO from westerly to easterly quickly through the autumn, looks like that, or from easterly to westerly through the autumn looks like that, with below average heights again through the country in that sort of position, and above average heights are up there. So a little bit more of a blocking signal in those Octobers. They look unsettled, they look potentially quite wet, totally different to the Octobers we were just looking at. And then the Novembers also look very unsettled when we're flipping the easterly QBO to westerly quickly through the autumn. They look like very, very unsettled Novembers as well. Bear in mind, there's not many of them. There's only 1959, 1963, 1982, 1987, 1992, and 2010, where this flip is occurring through these autumns. But very unsettled looking signal for the Novembers. Finally, these westerly QBO autumns, where we've flipped it quickly from easterly to westerly, look like that. They are unsettled autumns with below average heights over to western country. Not cold, bring the flow and the jet through like that. So they're westerly dominated and they're unsettled but not particularly cold autumns. If we flip the QBO from easterly to westerly very quickly through the autumn. As I say, I think that's really unlikely. I've got a feeling what we're going to do is just gradually ease this easterly QBO away. So I think the autumn of 2018 will probably still be an easterly QBO autumn, but it will be a waning easterly QBO autumn. and by November, possibly, we will be just about into westerly QBO. But for most of the autumn, I think it's just waning. Case of waning that easterly QBO away. And we saw that predominantly those are quite high pressure dominated, quite settled autumns when we do that. However, there is a bit of a caveat with that. When we peak the QBO in the summer, as we have done this year. I think as we will have done this year. So that's it. That's your 5th Autumn 2018 Analogues update done and dusted. It's all building up, remember this, to the Autumn 2018 forecast, which we will be releasing in just over a month's time. Sunday, 26th of August is a day when we are releasing the QBO Autumn 2018 forecast. So it's getting ever closer now to the business end of these updates. And next week, I think the 6th Autumn Analogues update will probably have a look at hot and dry Julys. We know we are having a very, very hot July. Certainly I do, recording these videos late at night here. So having a very hot July, also very dry July. I think we'll have a look and see what some of those autumns were like that follow really hot Julys and dry Julys next week. And also next week on Saturday, we've got the 2nd Autumn 2018 Seasonal Model Roundup as well. Right, so that's 30 minutes. I managed to get through it without having to pause it. I hope I haven't made too many mistakes. I'm aware, but I did get a little bit mixed up with some of that. So hope I didn't make too many errors due to the brain fog caused by the heat wave. So that's it anyway. We're going to place this video on the Autumn 2018 updates page later on today. There'll be a written summary that goes with it as well, so you can come back and read that written summary whenever you want to watch the video on demand, whenever you want it or whenever you need it. Don't forget to check out QBO's Sunny Roundup. That'll be with you just after lunch. And then later on this afternoon, probably around 5 o'clock, we'll have a look at the ECMWF and Meteo France seasonal models for the rest of this year. But at 31 minutes, that's all for now. And thanks for watching.